Falcon Radio Show. So get up, get out, and get something. Get in the zone. We live on the DT. Tune in, cause we about to blow like TNT. Falcon Central Radio Show. Gonna be berserk, you heard. We ain't even tripping, catching y'all slipping. What's good, man? On the Pro Football Central Radio Network, hosted by Aaron Freeman and Scott Carasik. What? This right here is a good present for you. Enjoy my presence like I was Santa Claus, man. Chillin', doing it.
Welcome back to Falcons Central Radio Show here on ProFootballCentral.com. I am one of your hosts, Aaron Freeman, joined with my good friend Scott Carasik. Today we are joined on the Bonita Tequila phone line with Jarrod. Jarrod. Remind me, Patterson. Thank you. I can't believe I blanked on that. Sorry, Jarrod.
That's all right.
It's all good, man. It's been one of those days.
Yeah. I apologize. Jarrod is a writer for PFC, very knowledgeable person on fantasy football and pro football, I guess reality football in general. So, Jarrod, the Falcons are coming off their third preseason game. It was not a promising affair in which the Tennessee Titans, I don't know if rolled over them is being too blunt about it, but I guess it just isn't kind of what we're expected with the Falcons and general what their starters can do. Does that game and that performance, does that change, it is preseason, but does that change sort of the expectations for what the Falcons might do in 2013, or there's just one hiccup in a game, meaningless game, and they're just going to continue to be the team that most people expect them to be?
Well, not to quote Dennis Green, but they are who we thought they are. The Falcons, even though they had a poor game in the preseason, a lot of times what we see this time of year, particularly with an established team like the Falcons, is their coaching staff doesn't want to unleash too many new wrinkles of their offense. They want to keep it very vanilla so that they don't give too much away to opposing defenses that they're going to have to play throughout the season. And the Atlanta coaching staff has that benefit on their side, is that they know what they have in some of their superstars. We know Matt Ryan is going to be rock solid. Julio Jones and Roddy White are the best tandem in football as far as the wide receiver position is going. And they managed to coax Tony Gonzalez out of, his halfway retirement. And so they know exactly what to expect from this offense. There's very few areas of concern for them. I know Tyson Clabo left on the right tackle position, and they have, I believe, Lamar Holmes and Ryan Schrader, who are kind of competing for that right tackle spot. But other than that, I mean, you got the majority of the team is coming back. On the defensive side of the ball, you got a couple of young superstars in the waiting with Desmond Trufant and Robert Alford, the first two picks of the draft this year. So the back end is going to get better as they continue to progress, as they continue to learn better technique, some of the things that maybe they don't dabble so much in college with. But in the NFL, they're definitely going to be hounded for their technical skills, and they're going to continue to get better. So I think that Atlanta, the coaching staff in particular, has used this as an opportunity to see what they have with their younger guys, again, without giving away too much for the regular season. So fans shouldn't read too much into that. There's bound to be some hiccups along the road, but I think they're just going to be fine for the regular season. They're going to be what we have seen from them the past several years now.
All right, you successfully talked me down from the ledge. All right, thank you. I appreciate it.
You shouldn't have been on the ledge in the first place.
No, I wasn't.
But,
I'm kidding.
Atlanta has never been a great preseason team, but I will say that the linebackers in particular have kind of shocked me with how good they've been, especially the undrafted guys. Maybe not Banks, but Warlow and Bartu have been ridiculous in my eyes. Have you been seeing the same kind of talent that I guess I have, which is instant backups, guys who could develop into starters long term in those two?
Oh, absolutely. The Falcons, when everybody around the league thinks about the Atlanta Falcons as a team, you think of the tremendous offense that they've managed to put together out there. But if you look at some of the talent on the defensive side of the ball, I know they lost John Abraham. They went and brought in O.C. Umenyiora, who is a veteran. He's a little bit older, but he's almost, an upgrade. In actuality, he is an upgrade over John Abraham at this point in their careers. So, that's not such a worry that you're going to lose some of the pass rush that he provided. Like you hit on with the linebackers, you got Sean Weatherspoon, who everybody expects the world from, but then the couple of lesser-known guys have been out there just playing like they demand a starting job. So that's phenomenal to see. The back end, the safeties have been very talented there for a couple of years now. And as I touched on briefly earlier, the two corners you guys drafted at the top of your draft, those guys are just insanely talented. They're going to get to learn from one of the best ball hawks the NFL has seen over the last couple of decades in Asante Samuel. So this secondary in particular could really benefit from the strengthening of the front seven. If those linebackers can play up to their potential and the potential that we've seen so far in the preseason, then absolutely this defense could actually start taking away some of that attention from the offense and actually get some of the respect that they deserve.
I completely agree with you on that. Now, as far as the front seven is concerned, have you been impressed with Kroy Bierman this preseason in his new role?
There's times that you see the flashes, and there's times where I feel that he still has a little bit of refinement to do. Maybe that's just getting going in the early preseason and making sure that, a lot of guys, particularly veterans, they come in and it's such a routine to them that, they don't really get going into the flow of things until about the halfway point of the preseason. And, there's a few guys on the roster that I really expect to play up to their standards, come regular season. So, there are times when you look at the tape and you think, he's playing all right. And then there's times that you look at the tape and you think, wow, this guy is amazing. So it's been a little bit hit and miss for me this preseason with some of the things that I've seen. I haven't had a chance to break down all of the game tape from the Falcons preseason just yet. I'm still working on that. But, I think that he's going to be just fine for the regular season.
Okay. You write about fantasy football, Jarrod, a little bit, and I wrote an article on FalconsFans.com earlier this week about how important the Falcons running game will be this upcoming season, especially given some of the issues that the offensive line has had. And how good a player do you think Steven Jackson is going to be this season, and have you seen some of what he might potentially be in these early preseason games?
Well, as far as Steven Jackson is concerned, I watched the first preseason game with Atlanta, and to be honest with you, he looked a little out of place. He looked a little hesitant running behind the line, and, that could be just a product of, again, his first preseason game, a little bit of jitters. You're in a new city after he spent, I'm not sure how many years in St. Louis. But, the second game was just night and day. I mean, it's like watching a rookie, and it just clicked for him, and suddenly he got it. And he really started, hitting the hole with authority, and he started, he seemed to get a better vision of the field, or a better view of the field, and what to expect from the offensive lineman in front of him. And that's going to be a progression for him. It's new guys that he's working with after spending, his entire career with the same organization. So I expect him to continue to develop into the stud of a running back that we all know he's capable of being. Obviously, there's concerns as he's getting a little bit older, maybe a little bit of wear and tear with the rugged running style that he has. But, looking at him this season, the guy is just built solid. I mean, you can tell that he spends a great deal of time in the off season working on his physique, working on his speed and his durability. And I would expect nothing less from him than what we've seen the last 2 or 3 years in St. Louis.
Okay. Sounds good.
So as far as, say, a fantasy projection for Steven Jackson.
All right. As far as my rankings go, Steven Jackson, I had him kind of in that 10 to 15 range where he's just bordering on being a top 10 type running back. And I've actually already drafted for the couple of NFL draft leagues that I get into, standard leagues, and he's going in that round 2, round 3 area. So it seems like people still have a lot of faith in his abilities. And I see him as being that for the Falcons as well. I would expect Jarrod Rogers to get more involved. He's been better than advertised in pass protection for a little guy. He actually runs extremely well between the tackles, and in PPR leagues, he catches the ball extremely well. So Quiz could steal a little bit of the thunder from Steven Jackson, but I still expect him to have, like I said, just bordering on a top 10 type fantasy season for Atlanta, particularly if, like I said, Lamar Holmes can work out at right tackle and continue to develop. Then I think that Steven Jackson has a very good chance at replicating some of the stat lines that Michael Turner has put up for you guys the last few years. So.
Okay. Just to, veer slightly away on the fantasy track, I saw you posted your top 10 fantasy quarterbacks over the weekend, and you had Matt Ryan at number 5, but my personal interest, because I happen to have him in one of my keeper leagues, is that you had Andrew Luck at number 6. Do you really think Andrew Luck has the potential to put up some impressive numbers that will put him in that upper tier of fantasy quarterbacks this year?
I believe that Andrew Luck is going to really impress some people this year, even more so than he did last year. I believe that really the only struggles that he had as a quarterback, looking at his film, his completion percentage was down around, I believe, 54, 55%, which is nowhere close to elite NFL standards. They want a quarterback to be in that 63 to 65% completion percentage range. So he needs to get that up a little bit and, minimize the turnovers. But the guy is incredibly intelligent, as we've seen him play at Stanford the last several years. He's getting his old offensive coordinator, Pep Hamilton, back, which is going to, I believe, do wonders for his confidence and also cut back on the amount of attempts that he's going to need to make. I believe he threw the ball like 630 times last year. And it's impossible to not throw the ball that many times and not make mistakes. So as a rookie, he did very well. He was poised, even though he got hit a lot. And one of the things about Andrew Luck in particular that a lot of people underrate is his ability to run. He's built like a linebacker. I think he's 6'5", 250, and he's kind of got that Ben Roethlisberger quality in that it's very difficult to take him down once you get a hand on him. He's so strong, he's so physical. But we don't really think of him like that because he's been compared so drastically to Peyton Manning ever since he was drafted by the Colts. The immediate comparison became he's Peyton Manning. And when everyone thinks of Peyton Manning, we realize that he can't run to save his life. So when Andrew Luck came in, I guess people almost saw him as the carbon copy of Peyton Manning, and they just ignored the amazing ability that he has to not only escape pressure, but he can also scramble with the ball when necessary, which almost puts him into that new wave of quarterback that's able to do both, throw the ball particularly well from the pocket, but also to keep defenses on their toes by running with it on occasion.
I've always kind of compared Andrew Luck to more of a John Elway type, to be honest with you.
And that's a fantastic comparison, very, very fair one. I know a lot of the younger viewers might not remember John Elway and the amazing things that he was able to do running the ball. we always think of the 2-minute drills that he was able to pull off and these miraculous come from behind victories. But one of the greatest highlights of Elway is when he's diving into the end zone and gets hit and he does the helicopter spin into the end zone. That was one of the greatest plays of his career. So.
Yeah, exactly. I did actually compare Luck to Roethlisberger when he came out because it was so easy to make the Peyton Manning comparisons, even though, as you say, his game does probably mirror Roethlisberger's a little bit more because of his athleticism. But, I just was curious about that ranking because, most people expect Matt Ryan, most people consider him to be a top 5 fantasy quarterback, and they expect him to throw for, 4,500 yards, 30-plus touchdowns, and you having Andrew Luck there, I certainly think he's capable because I think universally people agree he's the best quarterback prospect, at least since Manning, if not Elway, in some people's eyes. And he's certainly capable of putting up ridiculous numbers. I was just curious, if you actually were expecting him to do that. So.
Yeah, I absolutely do expect him to do that this year. He's got a solid receiving core. Reggie Wayne is still putting up, amazing numbers, and he's still in great shape. They also, one of the most understated acquisitions for the Colts this year was Darius Hayward-Bay from Oakland. And a lot of people put the bust label on Hayward-Bay because he was unable to produce in Oakland, but if you look at the team he had around him, there wasn't a lot there to work with. And so far, his work with the Colts, I know he's passed T.Y. Hilton on the depth chart. He's working as the number 2 with the starting offense. And he looks like he could really be a game changer for them. And, the guy runs a legitimate 4.3 40 and stands, I believe, 6'2". So that's a great new target for Andrew Luck that didn't even cost him a draft pick. So.
Okay.
I've always been interested in seeing how Hayward-Bay could actually develop with a even semi-talented quarterback. Just because he hasn't really had anybody that was, worth a damn in Oakland. And I don't think Oakland has anybody worth a damn right now either.
You're not a fan of Terrell Pryor?
I think Pryor is going to get a lot of yards in garbage time, but I think as far as actual talent, he's a 1-year guy so that they can go 2-14, tank and get Teddy. They're going to tank for Teddy.
That actually makes, quite a bit of sense. The one thing I've always had against Terrell Pryor is that he is an inaccurate quarterback. It's not that, we all know he can run a 4.3 and he's got all of the measurables. You put him at the combine and the guy stands out, but you put him in a classroom and from reports we've had from Ohio State from when he was in college, he was not the hardest worker on the team, to say the least. And he also seems to struggle a little bit with his downfield accuracy. And, as a dual threat quarterback, you got to be able to get rid of the ball accurately. Otherwise, you're just kind of a turnover waiting to happen. So it should be interesting to see what happens with Terrell Pryor in Oakland. But I tend to lean a little bit towards like you said, I'm not so convinced that he has the talent to step in and do it right away. And I think that's what they're going to expect him to do. Otherwise, they're going to move on, being in a position where they could take a guy like Teddy Bridgewater next season, maybe even looking at a top 5 pick. So.
Okay. All right. I'm going to try to steer this back towards the Falcons in some general way. Jarrod, do you also cover the Seahawks? Am I mistaken?
No, I do also cover the Seahawks.
Okay. So this kind of involves both the Falcons and the Seahawks. We look at the NFC and we see the NFC as this stacked conference with Seattle, Atlanta, Green Bay, San Francisco. You can even throw in the Giants. Two-part question. Where do you probably put the Falcons? I forgot about the hated Saints. I'll throw them a bone. But where do you put the Falcons in sort of this NFC kind of rat race? And do we kind of consider the NFC sort of like the SEC of the NFL, where it's like whoever wins the NFC probably will be favored in the Super Bowl, even though we know last year, a team like Baltimore did end up winning the Super Bowl. But it seems like just making it through the NFC seems like makes you, at least the perception of your team, appear better.
Absolutely. Well, and I believe you're right. There's far more talented teams and more depth in the NFC as opposed to the AFC. And perhaps the reason, I've been kind of mulling it over in my head, perhaps the reason that Baltimore won last year was because they didn't have such a rigorous schedule in the AFC. They didn't get quite as beat up as maybe San Francisco did. Not trying to make excuses for them. Obviously, I cover the Seahawks in the NFC West. And I expected San Francisco to win that game. They ran into, the Ray Lewis and Ed Reed farewell party, and it was just too much for them. As far as the Falcons go, steering it back to that, the Falcons, with the Saints in the division, you get Drew Brees, who is one of the best quarterbacks in the league. But the big part is you're getting Sean Payton back. And Sean Payton, his loss cannot be understated because he is an amazing coach. He is an offensive guru in this league, and he deserves a lot of respect. And I believe that New Orleans did an admirable job trying to fill in with the bounty scandal and all the media press and everything. They tried. But, overall, I believe that Atlanta, particularly on the defensive side of the ball, is just a far more talented team than the Saints are right now. So I believe that the Falcons will actually end up winning the division. And as far as where they stand in the NFC, I don't think I could pick 3 or 4 teams that I would have above them at this point in time. So, it looks to me like the chips are going to fall with Atlanta going into the playoffs and having, after last year, finally getting over that hump and winning a couple of playoff games, or a playoff game, I'm sorry. They're actually kind of primed to make a run in the playoffs to the point where they feel confident in themselves. They know they can do it. There's not that, that hanging over their head anymore. So it's very real possibility that the Falcons can make a Super Bowl run this year, and I think at the very least they'll be seeing themselves in the NFC Championship again. They're not one of those one and done teams. They got a lot of young talent on that team, and I don't think any of them are going anywhere anytime soon, with the exception of maybe Tony Gonzalez.
Okay.
I can agree with that. I'd say that the only one that I would really be worried about is Tony, because he's 36 years old. He's got, 3 kids now? 2 kids? Mm-hmm. And, and his wife is a dime, so.
Right. And, so, the unfortunate thing for the Falcons right now is I know they've made some attempts to come up with a replacement for Tony Gonzalez for the long term. They've brought in guys like Chase Kaufman, Tui Lolo from Stanford this offseason as well. And so far, neither of those guys seems to be jumping up and taking hold of that number 2 job. And that's kind of unfortunate because you have one of the greatest mentors at the tight end position that the game's maybe ever seen or maybe ever will see. And so I'm really hoping that before Tony Gonzalez hangs it up and says he's done, that the Falcons can get, a quality tight end in there that is going to be the number 1 when he's gone. And maybe he gets an off season or a season with Tony to learn some of the things that has taken him over a decade to learn and to perfect, because he's truly, he's the greatest tight end of all time. And, any young guy that can spend a little bit of time around somebody like that, it's going to do nothing but help them for the long term.
I agree. So one of the things that I find interesting is whether or not the Falcons are a team that can win on the road in the playoffs. You're talking about how they got some young talent on that defense, and I guess one of the questions is that young talent going to be able to step up this year and help them become one of the better defenses in the NFC, or in the NFL, I should say? Because, so much of being able to win on the road in the playoffs is about having a defense that can go into another team's stadium and, shutting down one of the top offenses in the league, which typically you find in the playoffs. And so one of the issues I have with the Falcons, and, this will probably be the most negative thing I'll say about them on this podcast, is whether or not they are in a situation where they have to, get home field advantage like they've gotten in recent years. And I was just curious, where do you fall on that? I know you've been praising of their defense, and do you think it's made enough strides to kind of be one of those teams that can win regardless of whether they're playing in the Georgia Dome or if they can go into a place like Seattle or Lambeau Field and win in January?
Well, that's an excellent question. Atlanta, people are always going to say they can't do it until they do it. This past season, covering the Seahawks, I heard nonstop going into the playoffs. Our first round playoff game was on the road against the Washington Redskins. And, all week long, the media's throwing out all these stats. The Seahawks haven't won a road playoff game since 1984, and it almost kind of gets you down a little bit, but then they go out and they do it. And so it's not that it's undoable. And personally, I'm of the belief that with as good as Atlanta is at home and as good as they are throughout the regular season, that it might actually do them some good to get a first-round away game so that they could build that confidence, because you remember a few years back when the Giants made their first Super Bowl run, the year that the Patriots were undefeated up to the Super Bowl. That team was, I believe they were only like 9-7 in the regular season, and nobody thought they stood a chance in the playoffs. But then they go on the road and they get their first game. I'm not sure if I'm correct on this, but I believe it was at Green Bay in Lambeau Field. And they go and they get all of this confidence from beating a quality team on the road, and that confidence projects them to a Super Bowl. And it could be a very similar situation with Atlanta, where if they were to get a solid team on the road, then beat that team, that confidence is not only going to translate for the remainder of the playoffs, but as we mentioned with these young guys, that's something that they're going to carry with them for the next several seasons. And that's a confidence that is far underrated in the league, because, any athlete at any given time can look like a superstar in the NFL. There's so much talent. So it's important to get confidence in these young guys and let them truly believe that they're capable of winning on the road, which Atlanta is. Their defense has gotten them to, middle of the pack, let's say. Maybe they're not a top 10 defense, but when you can put up 35 to 40 points a game, you don't need a top 10 defense to win football games. So I definitely believe that their defense is good enough. It's not going to be like last season, the New Orleans Saints, for example, where they, could go out and score 40 points and lose because their defense is giving up 500 yards a game. I don't see Atlanta having those types of issues. They're definitely going to give up some points at times, but again, you have such an incredible offense built around Matt Ryan, and he is one of the best decision makers in the league. So he knows how to win games. He knows how to win close games, and that can translate to anywhere in the NFL as long as he believes in it. So,
all right. Yeah. Thanks, Jarrod. Just processing all that. Well, Jarrod, we appreciate you coming on, and people can find you on Twitter, correct?
That is correct. At J_M_Patterson.
Okay. All right, Jarrod, we appreciate you coming on, and maybe we'll get you on again, maybe perhaps through the week before the Falcons play the Seahawks this year.
I would absolutely love to come on again, guys. I really had a blast. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Football fans, check out ProFootballCentral.com for all the latest NFL news and analysis. Also, check out the very popular Pro Football Central Radio Network for awesome NFL talk around the league. Go to ProFootballCentral.com. ProFootballCentral.com.
This is Michael Johnson. This is David Nelson. This is Rob McClain. This is Antonio Gray.
This is Antonio Brown.
Hi, this is Kyle Rudolph.
On the Pro Football Central Radio Network.
We're here.
That I do enjoy, actually. We're here. Sorry, for those who don't know, I am a huge wrestling fan. It's still real to me, damn it. It really isn't, but I do enjoy it. I understand that it's predetermined. I understand that it's scripted. I understand that all the matches are going to be whatever they are. But it is fun to watch. Women, you have your soap operas. Men, that's ours. At least in ours, they take a steel chair and beat the other dude over the head with it.
It's a pretty good comparison, yeah. It's a soap opera with steel chairs and tables.
And cage matches, which are my personal favorite.
Yeah.
That being said, speaking of steel chairs and cage matches and dangerous things, we've got a bunch of cuts today.
Yeah.
So let's just say the cuts are that Denny Green line, as he said before. They were exactly who we thought they were. You know, it was the guys like Tim Bier, Devontae Campbell, Colin Cloherty, Seth Dagey, Cam Henderson.
Yeah. Definitely guys that we sort of expected to get cut. I think I put a list of like 20 guys on Falcon fans last week, basically saying the guys who are the
one there. I think the only one there is Marcus Jackson that you picked for your 53-man roster.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's okay.
And
I picked Tim Toon, so we're even.
I could say Marcus Jackson lasted a little longer than Tim Toon. So.
And I feel like we're both wrong at this point, and it's going to be like Darius Johnson.
Yeah. I agree with you on that one. He has been the one that stepped up this preseason. If any of these guys have stepped up, but he was the one.
And he's been playing special teams.
Yeah.
Like, that's why I don't think Banks is going to make it, because Banks has seen 21 snaps at all linebackers, and he has not played a snap on special teams. I'm sorry, if you don't play special teams, you're not making the roster. That's just how it works in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, with the Falcons, they're a well-established team. You know, there's basically, if you break down, at least with the Falcons, you break down their roster and who plays offense, who plays defense. It's really only 36 guys, and everybody else on the roster has to play special teams. And the Falcons' 36 has pretty much been well-established over the last 4 or 5 years. And so pretty much if you want to come into Atlanta and your name's not O.C. Umenyiora or Steven Jackson, if you're going to make this team, you're going to have to play special teams.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I think Warlow and Bartu take those backup linebacker spots. Because, one, Schiller doesn't really play special teams anymore. And two, neither does Robert James. I think he's going to get cut too, because Warlow has been performing as well as Robert James has on special teams, and so is Bartu. And then you've got both of them outperforming him at linebacker. I think Robert James is gone. I think Pat Schiller gets cut and is brought back for the practice squad. I think Banks might get brought back for the practice squad as well. I think they're going to keep 7 linebackers and 2 on the practice squad. That's how it's going to be. So I think they're really only going to cut and just be like, bye-bye, you're done with us, with Robert James.
That's pretty bold of you because, as people probably know, Robert James has been cut several times, but he's always found a way to stick around for the Falcons. Originally
I
Fifth
think
round
Mike
pick in
Smith
2008.
found his new niece that Robert James has stolen from him at some point.
Okay.
That's not
Okay.
the only reason why I can think he's been there so long, but he doesn't have any upside anymore. He's, 29 years old in his sixth season. There's only so much you can do in the NFL to where you're just like, all right, you've been around forever and you haven't contributed a thing. And that's where Robert James is at. He hasn't contributed anything except special teams tackles. Well, guess who can do special teams tackles now? Misters, we haven't missed a tackle combined, Bartu and Warlow.
Yeah, I have nicknamed Robert James the Immortal One because he doesn't go away. You can't kill him. But it does seem like due to the play of Warlow and Bartu, I think we both picked 5 linebackers to make the final roster.
I actually picked 6.
Oh, you did? Okay. But yeah. So now you're going with 5?
Well, because James was my 6th, but now I'm saying he's not, and I'm saying they're going to have Zeke Mata as opposed to James.
Okay.
So I'm actually switching. I'm going to join your side and say that the Falcons are going to keep 5 safeties, 5 corners, 5 linebackers, 6 defensive ends / linebacker. Well, basically 6 defensive ends, but 2 of those are going to be defensive ends / defensive tackles, and the other 4 are going to be defensive ends / linebackers. And then you've got another 4 defensive tackles.
All right, you've come over to the dark side. I like that. All right, my side is the dark side.
Your side's the dark side. No, but I think we need to understand you have to meet in the middle. That's what Star Wars teaches us. Don't let those fanboys lie to you, man. You got to think about it. No, that's just the podcast just got really weird right there. Anyway, no, I think Bartu and Warlow are guaranteed spots at this point. I think they play on special teams. I think they play as linebackers. And it's one of those things where if they get cut, a team will sign them, and that team will be the Saints, because that's how the Saints work. Because they're dirty, thieving D-bags.
All right, couldn't say it better. Yeah, you're probably right. I think, I would be floored if Bartu and Warlow are on the team's final cuts this Friday.
I wouldn't be shocked if Nicholas is cut, though.
I'm in the same boat.
Especially with how Bierman has been playing at linebacker. Because he's been good enough to be a 2-down guy and a blitzer. That's all Atlanta's going to use him as a 2-down guy and a blitzer. And then with Bartu able to cover tight ends and Warlow able to cover tight ends, did you know that Warlow has only been targeted 4 times, has allowed a total of 17 yards, and guess what? His longest catch allowed was 17 yards. The other 3 were -4, 0, and 4. This is a middle linebacker allowing that little amount of yards in coverage. Bartu's stats are even better. I mean, the 2 guys combined are excellent in coverage, exactly who you want covering a tight end. And when they were in the game against the Titans, there was 1 catch by a tight end. I don't think it's coincidence. And that was when the Falcons were in zone.
Okay, that's interesting. I did not know those stats, but I appreciate you. Those are very impressive stats. Almost as impressive as Warlow's, 6.50 3-cone drill?
Yeah, his 6.50 3-cone drill, his 3.97 short shuttle, his 4.60 40. I mean, he's a beast. Oh, and he's doing all that at 6'1", 236 pounds. Guess who else was 6'1", 236 pounds and played in Atlanta for 10 years?
Are you going with Jesse Tuggle?
Actually, no.
Okay.
I'm going with Jesse Tubble's replacement, Keith Brookins.
Oh, okay. I see what you did there. Okay.
Because Warlow is not a fiery guy like Tuggle was. Warlow's more of the lead by example type that Brookins is.
Okay.
And that's what you'll see. Because it's Spoon's defense. Let Spoon have it, and then just have Warlow be a great example for the guys to follow. And I think long-term, Dent ends up as the backup thumper. When they run 3-4 packages, you put Dent in. You got Warlow, Dent, Bartu, and Weatherspoon. Because Bartu can show some blitz skills, too. Warlow can show some blitz skills. Run some double A-gap blitzes, for God's sake, Mike Nolan. Sorry. That's where the Saints are going to fail this year.
With their A-gap blitzes?
Well, with their A-gaps, period. I would say throw Corey Peters in the A-gap, but put Corey Peters and Babineau and 3 technique in the B-gap. Overload the A-gaps, put, Weatherspoon and Dent in there, and then run zone blitz with the rest of the guys. And you could cause some havoc with a double A-gap blitz against the Saints, because that center gap, their center doesn't understand the new protection schemes. And this early in the season, exploit it as much as possible and beat them on their turf. Get that first game away win out of the way. Get that Saints win out of the way. We should split the series with them every year, just because of how much they're hated. And I hate saying that we should lose to them every year, but it's always an even matchup. Even if they suck like they did last year and we're undefeated, that's how it works. Because they're evil D-bags. They're the Satans. Welcome to the rivalry. Haven't been here,
Yeah.
It's like Georgia Tech, Georgia. Like, it's that same kind of blood. And people that don't see that don't understand. That is why we hate the Saints. Because they're evil D-bags. And they're from New Orleans, and that's just a dirty city.
All right. You have added plenty of fuel to the fire. Shots fired across the bow to, Saint Central podcast. So we'll see what they have to say in reply to that. But I'm sure that's going to be a very enlightening next few weeks before that game comes up.
Well.
Any more thoughts, Scott, you have before we get out of here?
Just one final one. We finally have real football back this weekend. Thank God. North Carolina versus South Carolina. The war between the states is going to be fun to watch.
And it's my neck of the woods versus your neck of the woods.
It is. The problem is my neck of the woods is a good bit better than your neck of the woods.
Yeah, I wasn't gonna claim North Carolina in this game, but if they happen to magically upset the Gamecocks this weekend, I will.
You understand that I'm not saying this to talk crap, even though it does come off that way. I'm saying this as North Carolina is unranked, deservedly so. They're about the 30th, the 35th best team, which isn't a bad team, but that's about where they should be.
That's fair.
Sound about right?
Yeah.
But South Carolina is the number 16.
Yeah.
And they should be about the 6th to the 9th. So they're deservedly ranked too. And they're that damn good. So I'm not talking crap about North Carolina. I'm just saying South Carolina is a good bit better. There is a large gap between those two teams. I'm actually excited to see Ole Miss take on Vanderbilt. I want to see how this Nkemdiche kid plays with his brother right behind him.
You mean a Vanderbilt football game is actually intriguing?
Well, no, the Ole Miss side of it is intriguing.
Oh, okay. I was about to say, we are entering a brand new era of college football now.
Well, I'm also one of those guys that every college football game is interesting to me because it's football. I mean, Colgate at Air Force, okay, maybe that's not very interesting, or William & Mary at West Virginia, but I mean, let's use some common sense. Purdue at Cincinnati, that could be an interesting game, you know? Massachusetts at Wisconsin, that could be an interesting game. Northwestern versus Cal, that could be a game that could end up being the Rose Bowl this year if both teams just magically get good. And, of course, Georgia-Clemson is going to be a fun game to watch. Alabama versus BT could be fun. I mean, there's some good, solid games on the schedule this week.
Yep, this is our warm-up to the NFL the next weekend.
Exactly. And LSU and TCU, I think Texas Christian could beat the pants off of LSU because LSU isn't that good.
I'm definitely looking forward to watching some college football this weekend. Get a 6-pack, maybe a 12-pack, depending on my mood, and sitting down Saturday.
Are you a North Carolina fan?
I live in Chapel Hill, or right around Chapel Hill, so, and I actually happen to be employed by the university, so I guess technically I should be a fan because they pay my salary.
I would be a fan. You're probably going to win a 12-pack after this week. I think it's going to be that bad. Anyway, That's all we've got for this week. I'm Scott Carasik. That was Aaron Freeman. You can catch me on Twitter at Scott Carasik. You can get him at FalcFans. You can also get the radio show itself at Falcons PFC. Send us any of your questions. We'll be glad to answer them on air next week.
This has been a presentation of the Pro Football Central Network. For news, blogs, highlights, and more, log on to ProFootballCentral.com.